Today, I will share with you how we helped CanCom's marketing team to become fully independent. As of right now, just a handful of designers and content editors are managing 150 plus sites with one system that they've built themselves. Before we get into it, let me introduce myself. I'm Jakob Trost. I'm the CTO of Great, and I've developed or helped develop the Great Suite, which is a tool that helps our clients to create professional websites much more efficient. But today, I'm actually going to talk about pain. The pain of hundreds of websites being managed by one marketing team. They didn't have any scalable structures, they didn't have developers on their team, and they didn't even have efficient coordination. So what does that pain look like? So we have this small marketing team, and they were already responsible for hundreds of sites. But every site worked with different plugins, different themes, different systems, different workflows, different people involved in there. So chances are, if you log into one system, it's completely different. You might have to contact a third-party agency just to get some changes done. And that was painful because each update meant a lot of manual work, a lot of working hours spent on the projects. They had to coordinate each and every change with different stakeholders. Who knows how to do that change over there? Who knows that? And that, at the end, led to delays in all their deadlines and led to a lot of frustration. So I want to give you an example. Let's take a look at this contact form. We're going to focus at the first three fields here. We want to get rid of the first field and change the order of the other one. Actually, maybe we're just going to merge them. First name, last name becoming one field. So in theory, could be kind of a small change. But in practice, that actually is really frustrating. Because what ends up happening and what ended up happening pretty much every time they wanted to do such a change, initially somebody comes at the marketing team. Maybe it's a designer, maybe it's a data team in that. And they told them, okay, we want to do that change, but we need to do it everywhere. Okay, now they need to figure out, they're probably going to have a couple of meetings and figure out, okay, that's a stakeholder over there, we have to contact that agency. This we can actually do ourselves, but it works a little bit different. They actually shared Excel files and emails, and then the Excel file was already on a previously outdated version, and so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, that led to a lot of these changes never actually being implemented. So that led to inconsistency across their entire system. Each and every site was kind of in a different state, and nobody really knew what was actually the last state, what is the latest state that we want to apply in a new site, for example, and that leads to confusion. And at the end of the day, you just wasted so much time on each and every step in that process that, again, this entire process just wasn't working for them. It was so frustrating. And that's the point where they came to us. And before I'm going to explain how we solved the issues, I want to know who here has struggled with similar pain, who has had similar problems. Maybe raise your hands. All right, that's actually quite a lot. So you probably know how painful this can be. Let's focus on the goal state. Let's focus on the key outcomes that what has changed for CanCom as of today, as I'm now speaking. So we're first going to run it by the numbers. So those are actually numbers that the client confirmed to us. I'm assuming they're actually a little bit higher, but we're going to stick with the confirmed numbers. So we have 50% less maintenance across the board. We have a 2.5 faster site rollout, and we have 60% faster collaboration. So quite a significant change, I would say. But let's not only focus on the numbers, let's actually talk about the people involved in the process because they felt the pain. Did anything change for them? So for the content editors and marketing teams, they became empowered. They are now able to create landing pages, adapt changes, create new contents, roll out new sites by themselves without asking developers or other stakeholders how to do that. We help them become independent. On the other hand, the design team was happy as well because they now had a consistent design system. They developed or provided all the components, all the assets that the marketing team therefore just uses, and they can just update them all in once with one click. So they know the entire design system is consistent across all of the hundreds of sites. And last but not least, business. I'm not explaining why these numbers are nice for business, but in reality, deadlines are now met much more often. Changes are much more consistent, and the team works and collaborates much faster. So we help them reduce their own resources. All right, let's dive in. How does it work? How did we help them? So first off was kind of a mind shift that we communicated to them. Instead of thinking about, okay, now I need to create a new website and a new website and a new website, instead of creating websites, create a system, and its output eventually is websites. So whatever you build it once and reuse it everywhere. You're never doing something twice. If you're honest to yourself and you're building a lot of website, pretty much on every website, you're gonna repeat a couple of steps. You're gonna build something that displays the hero image. You're gonna build something that displays some posts, testimonials, whatever. You're gonna repeat yourself. So in the case of just having a small marketing team, but 150 plus sites, that's kind of a hard challenge if you always manually do the same things all over again. So how does it work? So whenever you change something like a text or a layout or an image, you want to immediately see the change on other sites as well. If you have something that uses the same resources, apply the change over there as well. And that goes, for example, for images. If you upload a new images in your hero of some of your campaigns or at a content section, you want this image to be updated wherever it is used as well. Same goes for layouts. So if you change a layout, you want to make sure that if you change it at one place, it becomes changed somewhere else without changing its content. But let's take a look how the website structure of that client of CanCom actually look like. So this is our architecture of the entire system. I'm going to walk you through the parts. You're not going to be able to read that. So at the heart of this is, and that was the first step in the project, is the global library. So the global library actually is one WordPress site. You can think of it as a staging site. That's not actually a live website that's out there. So that's not really a website. It's only a library of components. Those components can be your design system, your forms with your interactions, your media, PDF files, whatever you come up with. All your assets are hosted, managed, and maintained there on one instance. So that was the first step of the project, and they built the library themselves. But now you have to use the library to actually make use of it. So the first step then was relaunching the corporate website. And because the library was already there, the marketing team, and actually only the content editors who worked on the corporate website, actually it was 4 or 5 people working on it, delivered the entire rather complex corporate websites in 6 weeks, 250 plus pages in 6 weeks, which is kind of nice. And they're not all WordPress professionals. But there's not only the corporate website, this company is rather large and it has a lot of sites. That's why this entire project came into place. So we do have another type of sites, which they call microsites. Microsites are kind of internal in the company sites. They are for like a newsroom, an investor relations site, a blog site, a site to display the latest offers in the healthcare industry. A lot of different sites that they use for public access, but they are still within the corporate network of sites. They are still associated with CanCom. But each and every site needs to be still managed by that small marketing team. Without all the content being different, they still need to be able to use the same approach, use the same resources, use the same templates. And the other type of site is the partner site. So they do also have a lot of sites with other corporations, partnerships. Those are displaying offers that they collaborate on or whatever type of content they want to display. And the difference here is it is still maintained by the marketing team. They still have to deliver those sites rather fast, but they might look totally different. So instead of looking CanCom red, they might look blue and have different fonts or whatever. But they still want to use the same approach, the same system, be familiar with it, and be as fast as they are on the corporate sites. So that is the entire architecture of the system that is in place as of today. Now I'm going to walk you through an actual component and take a look at some screenshots how this works on a day-to-day basis. So there's a lot that goes into this large system of sites. Those are some of the content types and assets that are distributed and provided and maintained across the entire system. I could go on for hours and hours and explain how each and every one of these works and how the relationship works, but I'm not going to do that today. We're going to focus on one simple content type. And I'm going to walk you through from step to step and explain the entire process of how this actually scales across 150 sites. So we are going to focus on dynamic templates. So the first step is somebody needs to create a template. So obviously, initially, building the library, somebody needed to create a template. But even as of today, there might be a requirement for a new template, a new section that they now want to display on some of their sites. So somebody needs to create it. And that all works in the block editor. This is a live screenshot of a template that is a little bit complex. And that is built by a WordPress professional, like by a designer who knows how to use the system. In general, you can think of dynamic templates as reusable components that have a lot of dynamic elements that you can easily override and fill with whatever content you want to fill it with. So in that case, I'm going to show you how this behaves in the front end, where you see a headline, overline, a part that holds an image, some buttons, some grayed out area at the bottom, and that actually is an interactive component that toggles content, which, again, can be rather complex to build if you really want to get into it. But you still need to be able for people who don't have the experience to use it. So each and every part of this template is made dynamic. So for example, this text is now a content whitebox 1 and can be overwritten rather easily. So now you've built the template. You created the resource for the team. Now you need to use that template. Now that template gets inserted into the editor, into, for example, a page. That's a live screenshot out of the system. It's now filled with content. You just insert a headline in there, you insert a subline, overline, what they called, you insert an image. But they also insert it into patterns, sections, other templates. So whenever a new user is creating a new page, he or she gets suggested with a collection of pre-built templates that can easily just put in their site and then just fill in their contents. And let's take a quick look of how this looks in the front end. Rather similar, but now you can see what actually happens if somebody clicks the button. So that is all made perfectly fine by the designer, and it's accessible, and the designer took care of it, and the content editor can easily fill it with content. And they cannot mess it up. So you cannot get rid of elements, you cannot change the structure, and you cannot change the responsive behavior, all that. It's just perfectly created and kept in control by the design template. So now you have that template, now you're going to use it across all your sites. So those are screenshots from all different websites that use that template in different use cases, standalone. You can see a 3-column layout, 2-column layout, whatever you want. Let's focus on the one in the middle. So that actually looks a little bit different. You're not going to spot the difference immediately, maybe you are. But if we compare that interaction to the original component, you can see, for example, the button is now black and it's using a different font. So that screenshot I made from a partner website, so from one of these partner microsites. So it automatically adapts to whatever global style sheet, what design sheet you have in place there. Okay, now you've created the template and now you've created hundreds of sites that use that template. But what if you now want to introduce a change? What if you now want to update the template? Because I don't know, maybe you made a mistake or you just simply want a new structure. So let's do that. Let's take a look at the template and we're going to change its structure. We're going to move the top section to the bottom and we're going to right align the bottom. So I'm doing that change as a designer simply in the block editor and I'm hitting save. And that's it. By hitting save, that template gets now updated on all the hundreds of sites it's used on in each and every occasion. But it doesn't change the content. So let's focus on the screenshot we had on the previous screen. So if I update that template, that screen now gets changed. So the template is reused, the structure is changed, but the content stays intact, the content stays the same. So that's how all the assets are kept in sync and kept up to date. So you updated everything with one click. Great. Got a typo. But isn't that really great? Because now I've updated and I've changed hundreds of websites with one click. That is kind of risky, isn't it? So that's not the end of the road. You need to stay in charge and you need to stay in control. You still want people to be able to change all the things and keep them in sync, but you need to review them. You need to stay in control. So those global updates are really, really powerful, but risky as well. And on the other hand, the distribution process and the conditions that are within this entire process, so for example, deciding whether this template goes live on that side or on that side, whether it's actually used over there or over there, all these conditions are maintained by the client globally. And somebody who changes that piece of content shouldn't need to worry about that. They should just update the asset. So all of these things could be rather complex, but we still want to empower less experienced people to stay in charge and update the resource whatever they find it necessary to. And that's why we added a review process in there as well. So let's walk you through that real quick. So when you're updating that original template, you're going to see a notice something like this. That's a screenshot I made from the site, not from that template specifically because that was used on way more sites. But you see, it will be reviewed before it's actually published and used on other sites. So you can see 5 linked posts. So now I am the designer, I made the change and I hit save. So now I can close my laptop, don't need to worry about it. And now a reviewer will be notified about this change, or a team of reviewers. You can define that, Cancom define that themselves. And then they get a notice, they're gonna log into WordPress and they're gonna see something like this. So this source post is now in review. So it's actually not published anywhere, it has been adjusted, and now you can do 3 things. You can approve the change, which will then update it everywhere. You can request modification or you can revert the change. So let's first request the modification. Now I need you to make the main headline an H1, thanks. All right, you can just leave a message and send it to the editor. The editor now will receive a similar notification. Hey, there has been changes requested to your site. Please log in. So they're logging in to the site and see that their change has not been approved. They're seeing display of the message that the reviewer team left for them, and they can now work on that. So whenever they update that content, it gets notified to the reviewer team again. You can go over there a couple of times if you really want to. But at some point, you probably or most likely gonna approve the change. How does that look like? Once I approve the change, I can automatically see, okay, wherever this goes live, what effect it might have over there. And I can just go in there, take a look, see, okay, yeah, I'm actually fine with it, and I publish the change. All right, close down my laptop, go home. Now I log back in tomorrow. And then somebody told me we have an issue. And actually in that project, we streamlined the entire feedback loop using Adarim as well. That helped breaking down the coordination effort significantly. So somebody logs into Adarim, sees an issue on the site, and with the tool, they can just live comment on the website itself. And you can prompt it with the live comment. You can see there's a display issue on that site. I'm going to log in, I'm going to take a look, and I see, okay, that is actually caused by my change by the template yesterday I've published. And that can happen. I'm a human, I can make issues, or I just didn't check enough. But now I can go back into the same system and revert the change. I can revert the change directly from the post itself, so whenever I'm working on the approval workflow, or I can go back and pick one of the changes from a couple of days ago and just revert to that change. It's essentially Git. So I can revert back to the change of the template before anybody ever touched it, so to the last published state, and just immediately, because I'm able to globally deliver that asset, with one click, the issue gets removed on all of the sites. So now I walked you through dynamic templates. You've seen how to create the asset, how to publish it, how to use it, how to make changes to it, how to review changes for it. But what I've shown you for templates works for every single piece of asset inside this entire system. So whether this is a header, a footer, a form, whatever, even global styles, everything inside WordPress, everything that you create inside WordPress and manage inside WordPress can be synced, can be distributed, can be clustered across hundreds of sites with just one click. So it's not just a feature, it's a system-wide approach. let's wrap things up. So I want you to remember a couple of things from today, and mostly 3 things. What are the key takeaways? What can you potentially learn so you can solve similar pains and similar issues for your clients, or how they can actually solve the issues themselves? So first off, I want you to remember, don't build just websites, build systems, which its output at some point becomes a website. Build a system in place and then automate every step. Don't repeat yourself. Automate what repeats and reuse everything across all the projects, across all the sites. Even if you don't have 150 plus sites, you can still use that workflow with just a couple of sites. And maybe one of the most important things is empower the people. So even if the process and the conditions and the clusters in your system are rather complex, make sure you can empower people who actually need to make that change or are capable of making that change, but make sure you stay in charge, you stay in control. All right, and that's it. I want to thank you very much for your attention. If you want to learn more about that or how this works in detail, let's just get in touch with me, with Mark, or just book a demo. And yeah, thank you very much for your attention. All right, we now have a little Q&A. So if you have any questions, I would love you to go to one of these mics in the middle. I can just see them and ask whatever question you have.
Yo, Jacob. Great stuff, man. I have a question for you. I think a lot of people, I don't know about in the audience here or just watching the recording, like a lot of people build websites, maybe not for CanCom, right? CanCom has 150 websites. It's like a huge network of everything like that, and that's all like one company. But for the average agency owner or freelancer that maybe has 20, 30 clients, can this same conceptual like system be used for multiple different clients, not just one network like that? So maybe like a little smaller operation, or like how would it change if it was on that level, that scale?
Yeah, very good question. Obviously, easy answer, it depends. But let me explain that a little bit. So I would say yes. And I see a lot of our clients actually doing that, exactly that. What they're doing, they're not necessarily syncing or keeping all of their design assets in sync, but they're thinking websites as structures. So at the end of the day, they're delivering websites in kind of a similar pattern. Obviously, the design always is a little bit different because the client needs it to be individual. So chances are your hero section will become rather different than on the last project. But you always need some company information, you always need contact forms, you always need posts to display in some kind of order. And if you use that system and build a library, and you're not starting from scratch every time, and actually build a library yourself, then you solve that issue. So I see a lot of agencies specifically that work with our tool who created their own library system, and then whenever they create a new site, they just copy-paste the library or copy-paste the master site, and then just put in whatever templates they've built in the previous projects, just put them all in there, and then keep them in sync or not. That kind of depends on the project, and then they're just much faster. And it's not only in terms of design resources. Obviously, I focus a lot on templates and how you change the layouts and designs, but this works for entire post types and structures and even options. So, for example, what I know some clients are building, they're having like a couple of master data post types kind of like, and option pages, and they're reusing the same approach on every project. So natively, for example, they have 10, 20 footer templates that always show the contact information of the client and always show, I don't know, opening hours, email, telephone number, whatever. And they all building that with the same option and distributing that and keeping that in sync and simultaneously keeping the footer templates in sync. And you just drop in that footer template that you used on the last project, automatically references your design on that site, and automatically displays the options, the opening hours, emails, whatever the client already has in place. So you're really, really cutting down on the time you spend manually to build every project individually. Even if that then means you take that global resource and adapt from that. You just localize it, not keeping them in sync, and just adapt a little bit because that client needs a little bit extra. Hope that answered the question.
I had a question. Question on change management, version control. With all those various things, is there one master place that keeps a running log of the changes from the various departments on all of those global templates?
Very good question as well. So that's just one approach. I specifically showcased what this client was building. So in that approach, you have one master site that keeps all of the resources intact. And for all of these post types, on that master sites, a lot of revisions are enabled, for example. Obviously, the review system as well, all this approval system, all these different versions of each and every component are kept in the database, however you like. And additionally, if you want, and that client built it that way, that all your pages, forms, templates, whatever, all these types of components are kept in the system as revisions as well. Because this master site is never actually a public site, you don't really care about its performance in the front end. Obviously, you have to make sure the database holds strong there, but that's what they're doing. So that is the instance where all this kept in sync. This client specifically did not work on Git or anything. They don't even have developers, so it's kind of hard to tell them. But that is their version control. I hope that answers the question. Kind of? You want to? All right. Anybody else got any questions? All right. Then thank you very much for your attention. And hopefully going to see you around. Thank you.